Well, howdy folks. Welcome to another edition of the Too Old for Bull Show. I'm your host, Johnny. And today I'd like to talk about profound and meaningful slogans and sayings and how they might apply to a person's life and how they apply to my life. Now, I heard this saying a couple months ago, and it went like this: it's not how fast you go as long as you don't quit. And what that did is that helped me reach a goal of walking a mile on my 85th birthday. I started walking, in increments of a quarter of a mile. And when I got to 3/4 of a mile, I felt kind of discouraged. I felt I was walking too slow. And then I saw the saying, and I figured, well, as long as I'm walking and not quitting, I'm doing okay. So I got to say that saying did help me reach my goal of walking a mile on my 85th birthday. Now, another one that I heard, and I heard it many, many years ago, and I heard it through the years, and I've tried to apply it myself, is don't sweat the small stuff. Now, I can remember an incident that happened about 55 years ago. I was ushering in church on a Sunday, and I was in a very bad mood. I was in the back of the church, moaning and groaning. And why was I feeling this way? Well, I had a hangover from the party night before. I spilled wine or beer and coffee on a very expensive suit. My riding mower wouldn't work, and I had to cut the grass with a hand mower. And of course, I had to get up early to usher at the early mass. So I'm in the back of the church moaning and groaning, and this young man walks in. Must have been in his early 20s. He had a patch on one eye, he was carrying a cane, and he was walking very, very slow. Now, I watched him as he walked down the aisle, and all of a sudden his father came up behind me and tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, you see what Vietnam did to my boy? He said that a sniper's bullet had went in through his eye and exited the back of his head, and it left him with some very serious disabilities. Well, the father walked down to join his son, and I watched that young man walk slowly to the first pew in the church and sit down. Then I kind of thought to myself, you stupid son of a gun. And I cleaned that up for you ladies watching. But anyways, I said, you stupid son of a gun, you're in the back of church moaning about your suit and your riding lawnmower and your hangover. And look at that young man dealing with those terrible disabilities. So that's something I've never forgotten, and I try not to sweat the small stuff. Now, that young man went on to become a disc jockey and hosted a radio show. So like I say, I try to not sweat the small stuff. Now, another thing I like to mention is sometimes I see sayings from movies. One is a saying from a Clint Eastwood movie, a Dirty Harry movie, and he said, a man's got to know his limitations. Now, that's kind of an interesting saying, and it can have a reverse effect. Now, you really have to know your limitations, but you also have to know your capabilities, and you don't want to sell yourself short. As you age, you have to limit yourself to what you can do and can't do, but you have to keep trying. You can't limit your capabilities. So another thing I want to mention too is sometimes there's some really good sayings that apply to business. Now, I've been a big fan of the Godfather movie, and I remember the part in the movie where Vito Corleone says to Michael, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Well, in business, I coined a phrase, and it went something like this: keep your customers close and your suppliers closer. And by that I mean that a company goes nowhere without good suppliers. You have to respect your suppliers, and you have to pay your bills on time. I've seen people mistreat their suppliers, not pay their bills, and they pay dearly for it in the end. Now, another real good business saying is, plan your work and work your plan. Now, what that means is, I've seen a lot of people come up with brilliant plans, but what they do is, if the plan is enacted and things don't go quite as planned, they're afraid to change the plan. You have to have the courage to tweak or change your plan if things don't go right. So again, plan your work and work your plan. Now, what I've done too is I've been planning what I eat. Each night I fill out a menu planner and I write down what I'm going to eat for the next day. So I'm planning my food, and I'm also working the plan. So by that I mean, what I do is the next day I check off what I've eaten, and I check and see if I've followed the plan. And if I haven't followed the plan, I try to talk to myself and say, look, don't eat that again, don't do this, don't do that. Now, I haven't lost a lot of weight, but what it has done is it's made me aware of what I'm eating, and I haven't gained any weight. So there is some positive to planning what you're eating. Now, another saying that, and this is why I've got the cowboy hat on, it's a saying in the Old West, and it goes like this: you ride for the brand. And what that means is that when you work for somebody, you give them 100%. I've always felt that if you're unhappy at a place where you work, if they're mistreating you, if they're not paying you fairly or whatever, change, find a different job, but don't sit there and complain. That's the worst thing you can do for yourself. Now, probably the most important and famous saying or rule we've all heard is the golden rule. And that's, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, I don't have to elaborate on this, so we all know what it's about. And I could talk for an hour about it, but I'm not going to. But if you had to pick one rule to apply to the rest of your life, this would be the one to abide by. So folks, I hope you've enjoyed our little talk today, and I'll see you on down the trail.